First item is the water, sewer, and stormwater management. Mr. Baker, thank you for taking the time to be here tonight.
No problem.
We'll let you begin.
Okay, we'll hit the quicker topics first, the water and sewer issues. We have, as you know, the Morris Mill water section out there for Fruitland has all been completed. Everyone but 3 houses have signed up for the water, and we forwarded those last 3 on to the health department so that when they can take the next steps to getting those folks water if and when they're ready for it. The other water issue that we have, water issue we have going on is the airport water main extension. I met with our design engineer, GMB, last week. They have all of their survey done, and they have the preliminary site, or the preliminary layout for the main. Made a couple little adjustments to try to keep the main a little more easy to maintain. Some valves at appropriate locations, fire hydrants, that type of thing. But they are moving forward. They are reaching out to the airport right now to determine the best way to connect into the internal structure of the airport. But as far as the actual the path of the main's been, I would say it's probably about 3/4 done. It's now just a matter of filling in the details. Beyond that, we have the water and sewer master plan that we are still pursuing. We've gotten some preliminary pricing back. It's going to run looks like about $250,000 is what we're either going to be asking for in future budget, or we're going to see if we can't piece together some remaining funds from projects that didn't use all of their money, and piece that together and see if we can't fund it that way. So you'll be seeing a memo about that with unused PAYGO and with unused bond funds to try to move forward on some of those projects.
To fund what? I'm sorry. I lost you there for a second.
Oh,
To
sorry.
fund what?
I was saying we were either going to have to either program the money for the water and sewer master plan either into the budget, or you potentially use unused PAYGO and bond funds for that funding.
To prepare the master plan?
Yes, exactly. Because right now we've talked with several consultant firms based off of the scopes of work, and it's looking to cost about $250,000 for the completion of these county-wide water and sewer master plan, which was not included in this year's budget. But again, it looks like we could use unused bond or PAYGO funds that we have to work the details out with finance, number one, to make sure it's something that we can do, in which case we would then have to come before the council to reshuffle some of those unused monies around. So we're just looking at potential ways to fund it.
Got a question?
Yes.
You're going to be asking us for $250,000 to pay for the master plan or consultant fee. Does that mean you're adopting a master plan?
No, we haven't. No, sir. We have not.
That's just work on it?
That is to develop a master plan,
Okay.
to come up with recommendations for what is the strategy the county wants to employ to provide water and sewer service to areas of the county that currently don't have it, that may not have the ability to have it. In the case of, some of these older lot sizes are small. If their septic goes up, they don't have the room that they need under current regulations to rebuild a septic tank.
Okay, so the clarification here is that we're talking about a water and sewer authority. We're not talking so much about stormwater or anything. We're specifically
No. Right now we're just talking about the water and sewer. The agenda item was water, sewer, and stormwater.
I appreciate it. I just wanted the clarification because
Yes.
for the public in general.
Yes. So we're just talking about sewer. True
Okay,
sewer.
understood.
So yeah, that's where we're at. But when if there's no questions on that, we can move into the stormwater, which I think is why most people are here.
Well, what makes you think that it's $250,000? What do you think the bulk of that expense is going to be? Are you just talking about a study to establish the pros and cons and the costs? Or
Yeah,
what?
and to investigate what really is going to be the best way. We've got a lot of rural areas. What areas can be provided with water and sewer based off of You know, for instance, if you have a lot of homes in a large clustered area, it's going to be significantly easier to address. Those are that's the low-hanging fruit, but how do you appropriately address houses that are out in bivalve, or all the way, further out in the county?
I think what to me is written all over this is that we need state funding for this. I really think that's true. I mean, we're at epidemic proportions is the wrong word, I think, but it is at a critical juncture right now where we have failing septics, where we do have to try to figure out how we're going to get that addressed. And I think it takes something from a state level probably to implement this more so than trying to do it on our, all on our own.
And we did have success with the water extension out to the sewer, or the water extension out to the airport.
Right.
But this water and sewer master plan is the first step in providing that. The state generally doesn't just hand out money if you don't have a plan
Right.
of how you want to spend it. If we go to the state and say, hey, we want to provide water and sewer service to failing septics, and they're going to say how, and we can't provide a logical, clear response that's backed by the council, then it's going to lessen our chances of being able to get that state funding.
We did just approve funding that the state granted to have planners for 3 local communities in Wicomico County, and that was strictly for a planning process
The
itself.
circuit rider.
Yes, so maybe there's hope.
Yeah, yeah.
We also had this George Myers and George
The east
Myers and
side,
Berkeley.
yeah.
On the east side, we had that report done. I mean, it seems to me like we're jumping around. So we've done this study on the east side, but now we need to do a study for the rest of the county. I mean, with that, we've not done anything to the east side since we've done the study. So we're going to do another study, I guess.
Yeah, the idea would be to take that study and we did a study for the east side and do something similar but county-wide so that we can have problems to it, or we can have guidance and a strategy moving forward as to how best not only to supply them with water and sewer, but the best financial methods to do this. Is it going to be, well, let's just bring in a third-party utility and have them plop in a package plant, or do we have the closest municipality extend their services out to them? But then you get into the issues with annexation. So it's a multifaceted issue.
Other than the east side, and we know where the problems there are on, I call it the Chesapeake Heights area. You probably don't know that by that name, but that's what the old folks call that area along Ocean City Road. Is there a lot of other areas in the county that they're subject to this right now?
To failing septics. Well, I mean, there's the trailer park issue out there
The
to,
Walston
Well,
switch.
Walston's Trailer Park, I know about that, yeah, but that's a private issue more so than a county issue, I mean, correct? I mean.
Well, these are all private issues.
yeah.
Well, I know they're
all the
private issues,
residences
but I
are
mean,
private
he's-
issues as well.
He's trying to handle that, and he's working with the state on that at the time. So, I mean, so you got that one, where else have we got a lot of problems that needs to justify a countywide study, I guess?
None that's been brought to my attention. I don't have anybody calling up, say, hey, I've got a community with a failing septic. It's my understanding that this approach with the water and sewer master plan was something that council was interested in approaching on a countywide level.
During the council priorities, I believe at least 3 council members listed it as the #1 priority. So this is
That's
a
not a
study.
majority.
Understood, understood. But it's still a concern that we took seriously, and the cost to do it countywide had a huge price tag. You are correct that the east side, it was a very isolated area, that some of the homes cannot be rebuilt because you would displace wells. There's rules on how close a well can be from a septic system, and by moving it to your front yard could impact your neighbor's wells. So, and the problem with that particular study is not only do they need sewer for the failing septics, they really need water. And then those older neighborhoods have no storm water, which we can get into. There's no pipes and drainage there. So what would become a simple, let's see if the city will lend us some water, becomes, can we get sewer as well? Can we completely rebuild the roads? And the cost just is staggering at that point. So I agree, it's frustrating that we've identified an area with issues and we haven't really come up with a solution
Well,
there yet.
When Pittsville and Willards had their issues years ago, and maybe some of the towns on the west side did too, I know the federal government stepped in and helped them with funding and loans and basically helped them probably design the systems and all that. Is that something that we could look at in this east side corridor?
There- I'll say USDA has a rural development, and that's what helped pay for a part of the Morris Mill water project. MDE came in with the other one. Ideally, when the federal government steps in, there's usually a public health crisis, and ideally we fix things before all the septics fail in Deer Harbor or you know, something like that. The thought behind the plan was any particular area in the county, if it had an issue, we can say this is generally how we would try to treat it. And then we can put it as a CIP project and come before council, go for grant money. The plan helps get grants. Having a plan, planning and zoning can talk to it better than we can, but having a plan helps when you go for grants and so forth.
Will this study also look into having a private company come in and doing?
That is one of the options, yes, that's one of the things that we'll be asking them to look at, is what's the best process. Is it, you know, a private package plant? Is it an extension of the existing? Is it something that's run by the county? You know, those are, you know, in a quick armchair assessment, those are the big three possibilities. And it might be that they, you know, the engineers who are doing the study might have an entirely different recommendation. Maybe there's maybe it's a hybrid of all of it. You know, maybe there's certain areas within the municipalities that have a buffer that say, look, you really probably, it's not feasible to go beyond, I'm just gonna pick a number, 3 miles outside of the current boundary of certain municipalities to provide water and sewer service to bring them in, simply because beyond that, you can't extend that gravity sewer much further without having to get into the lift stations and the cost. But then you've got little clustered areas that are further out, that's where the package plants and the private utilities make more sense to try to get into. So I seriously doubt it will be a one-size-fits-all. It'll probably be recommendations of.
Well, I commend you guys for working on this because it's long overdue. I can tell you, I've talked to a lot of constituents that don't want to live in the city. They don't want to be annexed. So that will become a big issue. Will they have an option? We don't know at this point. It was about a year or so ago. We had a meeting at Tri-County Council meeting at UMES, and there was a guy from the USDA there. And it's one of the things he talked about was water and sewer in the rural areas. And I got his card, and he doesn't work there anymore, but we can find out. I talked to some of the people at the Tri-County Council, and that's one of the issues we've talked about in the future as a priority as well. Have you talked to anybody from Worcester or Wicomico or Somerset County?
No, I have not.
Because they have two different ways of doing it, two different authorities, I guess you could say.
The Sanitary Commission in
Yes.
Somerset, yeah.
So that might be a good start. And another question I wanted to ask you is, how come you didn't ask for that $250,000 in the bond that we just discussed?
We have the bond going out that was approved earlier. It was not included in the CIP. We started developing and getting the cost estimates for the plan post the FY18 CIP. So we will intend to put it in this year's CIP. All the departments are working on their capital suggestions
So everything
now.
was committed prior to
Yeah.
thinking about this.
Which we could have come and amended the CIP to add it, but we don't have a funding source yet. So yeah, that's where we are. And that need to be part of the budget, so we need to amend the budget as well. It's pulling teeth.
Okay. Any other questions on the water and sewer? All right, stormwater. So, we have a presentation, I believe it was on your packets. A lot of the calls, emails, meetings, concerns have been from the August storms. So I'm gonna start with our recap of of what we experienced back this past August. On Monday, August 7th, this was the storm that had the tornadoes that took out
Right.
that building next to Hoppers. We had 3.5 inches of rain in 1 hour. We later on had about 2 more inches over the rest of the course of the day. So on that first day, we had about 5.5 inches of rain. Now that's important to note, because what that did was saturate our ground and reduce some of the capacity of the dirt to absorb some additional moisture that we were gonna get later on, starting that Friday into Saturday, where we got anywhere from 6 to 8 inches across the county. Through that August 11th and 12th storm, we had 14 roads damaged. We had 2 that were completely washed out and impassable, and we had to block off and repair. And we had 14 partial washouts where we lost part of a shoulder. Roads crews were able to get out, put some milling, some stone down, and stabilize it to prevent the entire road from going out. And those guys were out there round the clock, 14, 20-hour days, making sure that these roads were open and stable. And, I can't give enough accolades to the roads workers for everything that they did out there. I've got a partial or a list of the different roads, but I think what we've been getting a lot of calls on recently have been obviously on Pratt Road and also on Kaywood. So part of my focus is going to be on those 2 specific areas. So this is the NOAA map of our rainfall distribution for that storm. And people say, well, nobody called from Sharptown. Well, you can see in this map, Sharptown got about 1 to 2 inches of rain during that storm. That little pink center right there in the middle is smack where Pratt Road is. They experienced the most flooding we had. So they're the folks that got the 8 inches of rain. You can see other areas in the darker reds where Kaywood is at. So again, these were the areas that were seeing the heaviest amount of rain, which was centralized to the county.
Is this a rain precipitation, or is this a flooding?
This is the amount of rain we got.
Because, I don't understand how I understand the map where you're saying that the most rain fell in the center of Wicomico County on Pratt Road. That would lead you to believe, and honestly, correct me please, but that would lead me to believe that you're saying that the rainstorm stayed right over Pratt Road and just dropped 8 inches there, nowhere else.
No, over the course of the storm, Pratt, that area right there in the pink,
Right.
that's what got the most rain over the course. It's not that the storm just stopped there. It's just that over the course of those 8 hours, that area in there got the most rain.
This is a 24-hour.
Yeah, this is a
Correct.
full 1 day. This isn't like the storm just
This was
Stop.
the last storm
I
that we got.
understand. I just,
And
all right, I don't understand it. But
It's
go
hard
ahead.
to look at all those squares and then try to
No,
look
I
at the
just don't
outline.
understand how they can say that the rain predominantly stayed in one area. It's
Well, it's not that the storm stood still. It's just that over the course of a 24-hour period, these were the rainfall totals that NOAA
Pratt Road
calculated.
floods every time we have a major storm.
It would depend on how you're defining major. I think I have some clips that I can show of what we would see for our typical storms where the roads are not flooding.
Well, Pratt Road has flooded numerous times, and I don't think it's just because out of the luck of whoever's above dropped it in the center of Wicomico County every single time. I can appreciate the fact that you're saying this is a map from NOAA and it says that here's where the rain, but I don't want to get away from the fact that more so than how the rain is falling, it's how we're dispersing it. Because it seems every major storm we have, this area is impacted.
Oh,
And
well,
same with Kaywood.
last summer when they experienced flooding as well, there was the Nanticoke Road washout in June. That's about the same rough proximity as the Pratt Road. It's on the central to west part of the county. Barron Creek Dam, that tended to hit more Sussex County, but it's still a similar trend. We could go back and we should be able to reproduce these for every one of those storms, and we can look to see where did most of the rain fall. Our guys have been out there pretty much every rainfall since and see that things are flowing normal. And we'll let Dallas'
Yeah,
presentation speak for itself, but
Yeah,
survey
I would
shots
not-
have been obtained, and
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly gotten significantly more rain over the last year and a half than we have in a very long time. And hopefully this is just some weird cycle that's going to be ending soon.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
It
Right.
was about a year ago this week that we had a major storm, and your guys were out opening up the dams.
We
got a lot
had,
of
we
flooding.
had storms starting in July of 2016, September 2016.
Yes.
We had one in March of 2017. We've had them now in all, where they have been significant storms that have flooded areas, that places that did not flood in Hurricane Sandy.
And it seems like it's getting worse, like Councilman McKinnon said.
We've had 4 hurricanes form. I'm not gonna, I can't speak to the why or.
Well, you know, they have
But-
dams in Louisiana now for a reason, because they know they need them. So I'm assuming that the time has probably come where we need to recognize that there's more needed in Wicomico County.
Absolutely, I could not agree more.
Well, and that,
So-
I mean, to pile on a little bit,
A
I
little
mean,
bit.
you know, I mean, that, you know, there, you know, I've talked to Joe Holloway a little bit about this. He's like, well, you know, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, we were having drought situation. So, you know, it's
That's right.
unclear what the weather conditions will be. And you know, we are, I guess, at risk of maybe overreacting and maybe we're in a cycle. But it does seem clear from the weather we're having. I mean, you know, this is 3 times in the past 12 months at Pratt Road, that the current drainage, however it's designed, and whether it was designed well for, 15 or 16 years ago was normal, is not normal now, and it's not working now. So what, regardless of, you know, whether or not they got that localized rain at that event, you know, and I guess we can pray that doesn't happen again, you know, and I don't think they viewed it as luck that it happened there. You know, I mean, you know, it's pretty unlucky that it happened there, but, you know, I guess, you know, you probably will talk about this, but what can the county do going forward so that, you know, this sort of thing seems to be more normal now than it used to be? So
Yeah.
how do we fix their drainage specifically, and how do we have a countywide strategy for dealing with what may be the new normal, so this, you know, isn't happening not only at Pratt Road, but spread to other places?
Yeah, let me cycle back to our, what I'm gonna call our, you raised a question about our design storm, and I'll explain that when we get a little bit further. And let me run through the presentation, we'll certainly cycle back. But yes, it's an issue we can address, but, you know, we do have a strategy. I'm just gonna make a note to myself. So just real quickly, this was our worst case scenario for our road that went out. This was American Legion Drive, when the road washed out. The other one that washed out was Stockley, but ironically, all the dirt underneath Stockley went and left the asphalt bridging across it. It wasn't safe to travel, but the picture is not nearly as visually impressive as this is. So.
Was there a culvert there?
Yes, there was.
It walked away?
It washed it out completely. Yeah, there's a, you could actually, if I didn't have the picture loaded, but you can actually see the pipe further downstream.
Okay.
So, again, there's significant utilities running through there. There's a Verizon facility back there with fiber
Broadband.
optic. Yeah, the
Broadband
broadband,
down here.
exactly. Verizon was very anxious to get this road reopened. So that was Saturday. By Thursday, road crews had that road back opened. This is taken a couple weeks later because we've got the growth going on, but in essential, you know, we're letting the road settle out a little bit, and then we're gonna go in there and repave it.
Is that a larger culvert?
Yes.
When you put the larger culvert in, how many gallons of water are you allowing for? 'Cause I'm assuming that's how you decide the size as to what you think the potential water going through is, right?
We did not do sizing calcs. We knew, don't quote me on this, I believe we had a 36 inch in there before, and I believe we bumped that up to a 42 or possibly a 48. We increased the size to account for the additional water. It was a situation that a lot of times we rely on kind of anecdotal and empirical evidence. to whether or not to increase the size of a pipe if we know that there's a problem out there.
Tell us, is this a county road?
Yes.
I thought it was a private road.
It's a glorified driveway.
So I guess the question would be if this particular road, because this is going to be relevant, I think, to all the other areas where we currently have culverts now that may need to be replaced. Recognizing that a 36-inch didn't work here, I think it's very important for everybody to understand how much was going through there and what caused so much water to go through, how the water tables are, what's feeding into this area.
And one distinction with that is, this is a branch that runs underneath this road. This is not a dry drainage swale when there's no rain going through. There's always water going through here. It's a creek. There's always water. The majority of the ditches that you see through these subdivisions that have pipes sized underneath them are sized for to a specific storm, and that's how the sizes are determined. In this case, again, it's an actual creek, so we're trying to pass through the flow of the creek through the storm. It's not been sized because there's not a subdivision or a development that's gone in upstream, and that's why we have to put the pipes in because there's a creek there and we want a road over top of it.
You had said that you sort of increased the size by an anecdotal.
Yeah,
Strategy?
off the top of my head, a lot of times I rely on the expertise of my staff. My staff has been here for 15, 18, 20 years. I've been here for 7 months. I come in, I listen to their expertise, and they tell me, we really need to increase the size of this pipe. Okay, guys, you know these situations. I'm going to rely on your expertise.
What I'm leading to here is, if that's how the evaluation, or whatever that evaluation might have been done to replace this, to put the road back in, if we recognized similar problem on Pratt Road, because I know the culvert has been a very big issue on Pratt Road, could it not be anticipated that whatever science you're using or non-science you're using to decide the size of the pipe that went under this street, that maybe we should pretend there's a street we're trying to drive over on Pratt Road, and subsequently you should consider a larger pipe there as well?
Let me get through the Pratt Road presentation, and I hopefully will be able to explain that it's more than just dropping a larger pipe.
Understand? Okay.
So,
That-
sorry.
That area right there, you can keep going. That area right there, it looks like it was deep water at one time, other than a creek. It looks like it was,
Nah.
no, I mean 200 years ago. I've seen maps that this area was covered with a lot of water, so I was,
There were a lot of dams,
So, that's what I was wondering.
Realistically, if you look
If it
at
was
some of the
dammed
old
off
pictures of Salisbury, the city park was underwater.
right.
But yeah,
So is that a branch of the Wicomico?
that branch eventually feeds into.
That's
the-
Owens Branch, right?
Yeah.
It's Owens Branch.
Feeds it goes underneath.
Yeah, it eventually
49.
feeds into what, Mitchell Pond, but
Yeah.
eventually it works its way into the river. So, yes. So Pratt Road, number one, the red line you see on that aerial picture shows the path from the Fox Chase stormwater pond.
It's not Fox Chase.
Oh, no, Hunter's Mill, thank you.
Jump across the
Long
river.
way.
Yeah,
Came a long way.
sorry.
He walks that neighborhood.
Now it's in my district.
Along Pratt Road, from Pratt Road down to Pemberton, into Nistdale, through Nistdale along Royal Mile, and then eventually out to the river. It is a straight shot out to the river, okay? That drainage area that feeds through that pipe and through that swale covers a drainage area of approximately 470 acres. It picks up water all the way on the other side of Nanticoke Road. And then what I want.
Police farm.
Yeah, what I want to highlight on this is that there was a lot of concern that, now I've got Fox Chase stuck in my head. Hunter's Mill was the sole cause of the water that they were experiencing on Pratt Road, and it's not. There's a significant drainage that goes through this path. This is the path of a branch. If none of these communities were there, you would see water going through it because it's the path of not a branch, but it's the path that water would.
So you're
eventually-
saying some people think or thought it was coming from Hunter's Mill, that
Yeah,
development?
there was some concern that it was the majority of the rain was coming out of Hunter's Mill, and I mean, there certainly is water from Hunter's Mill, but there was also, you know.
So
that
you
drainage
do
area-
agree there is water coming from Hunter's Mill?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's where the pond discharges, so
Yes, but it's also, there's other areas that contribute.
Yes.
So-
Well, I mean, is that the drainage from north of Hunter's Mill, does that all drain into Hunter's Mill, their stormwater system then? You know, the pond and everything? Is that kind of coming, supposed to hit and be collected at Hunter's Mill then?
No, the Hunter's Mill pond only treats
Hunter's Mill,
Hunter's Mill,
Okay.
correct.
okay.
Okay. So, and this is what Pratt Road looked like. I took this right off of the YouTube videos that everybody's seen.
Yeah.
There's significant water, you know, in this area. Houses were underwater. Again, this is, you know, similar scenes out to Kaywood. This is where we got the 8 inches of rain. You know, we were out there, myself, my deputy director. We followed the path of this water all the way through, from here, all the way through the swale, through Nistdale, out to the river. All of the pipes were flowing full. There was no clog. I know there's been talk of a clog. I know there's been talk of a cooler. I have no doubt that some yard debris floated over into the ditch at one point, but I can tell you when we were out there, the water was flowing through these pipes. The pipes were full. There was no restriction here or through Nistdale.
Well,
So
so,
are you-
sorry, Matt, go for it.
so you're saying that if what you're saying is true and the pipes were full, then this level right here was the same level as the river?
No, because there's a downfall gradient. I mean, if it was
So then
all,
there must-
if everything was flat, then you would see a different water level. But, you know, I mean, there's a down gradient. Water flows downhill. This water would just be standing there, never draining, if there was no gradient for the water to go downhill. So no, it was not the same level as the
So it was
river.
continuously flowing water going
Yes.
through the drainage?
Yes.
So there must have been a bottleneck that was causing this to stand while the rest was flowing?
Again, yes, the pipes were full. All of the pipes along Pratt Road are 30-inch. The pipes underneath Pemberton Drive are 30-inch. So, I mean, everything through there is 30-inch. So to touch a minute on your question of, well, let's pretend this is a branch and throw in a larger pipe. If we throw a larger pipe in take that 30 up to a 48, you still got 30 inches before it, 30 inches after it. It's hydraulically, it's not going to make a difference to the system.
Well, how many
Unless-
pipes are there? Could they not all be upsized to 42 to 48?
They could all be upsized, and I would like to let me come back to that question because I've
So
got.
that's what I was getting ready to say, you'd have to replace all
Oh,
of them.
yeah, we'll, you know, it's something we've considered, and let me continue on with this.
Well,
Sorry.
sorry, we'll stop. So, I wasn't there on that day, but I'm told by people that were there that there was a backup at the culvert that was put in before the drainage ditch that runs north and south. That basically the drainage ditch was at a lower level than to the west of, I think it would be the west of the culvert. So it seemed that there was the folks there say the culvert is the problem. Before the culvert was there, we didn't have this stuff backing up. Culvert's there, it's acting like a dam in situations like this, that it was, and I guess someone can correct me who's there if I'm misrepresenting what was happening, but according to the eyewitnesses there, was that, the ditch was not carrying as much water as it could have because the culvert was acting more like a dam than, so.
What I can tell you is, and then this goes back to a statement that was made earlier, we completed the survey. This was not the survey of the entire road. We are going to survey the entire road. We're going to survey from Rockawalken to Upper Ferry. We're going to survey not just the road, but the swales on both sides of the ditch. We're surveying the stormwater pond to check for sediment buildup. The survey we conducted in-house, because we have a limited staff, we did this survey from that pipe all the way down to Pemberton. And what we can tell you is there is a foot of fall from that culvert pipe all the way down to Pemberton Drive. So there is not a pipe that's higher than it's supposed to be or angled the wrong direction. there's a foot of fall between, and you can't really see it here, but if it was, it would be kind of in this area. And it would, that pipe, and we're talking about this ditch right through here, there's a foot of fall along that swale and through that pipe, so it's not acting like the dam. Now, what I can say is that there are, sometimes there's the impression of, well, the pipe's angled wrong or put in wrong because I see water behind the pipe. They see the pipe and then they see the water level, well, clearly something's not right. And what happens is a lot of times when we go in and we're asked to clean out these swales, our grate all goes in and scoops out the dirt in the bottom. And so where you have the sediment meeting the bottom of the swale, it's dug out a little deeper. And people frequently that experience flooding issues, there's usually a frequent amount of calls, come clean out the ditch, come clean out the ditch. And so to try to help alleviate these concerns, we try to clean it out, but every time we clean it out, that ditch gets a little deeper. And so what you end up with is water standing behind the pipe, not because the pipe's at the wrong elevation, but just because it's been slowly dug deeper as folks want these ditches cleaned out. And it doesn't aid in the drainage. What it ends up in is, it ends up as a mosquito pond, basically. Right. Sitting behind there. So when you see some sediment and buildup in the ditches, it's natural. It's gonna slowly, the sediment's gonna slowly come back into that ditch to make it level, and then the water goes through. We experience this very frequently where the calls for cleaning out a ditch are then followed by, well, there's something wrong with the pipe because there's water behind it, but there's water behind it because the ditch is lower than the pond. So I'm gonna keep moving forward, sorry, so I can try to answer the question about the larger pipe.
Sure.
Okay, so what I do want to demonstrate is these pictures were taken on August 23rd. This is what I would consider one of our typical storms. We got 2 1/4 inches of rain this afternoon. We were out there, we met with the folks. There was a large contingent of citizens and representatives. This is the pipe that is, that there's been a lot of question about. This is the pipe that leads under our easement to the swale between Pratt Road and Pemberton Drive. The pipe is there so that we can have the road there so that we can get our grade all and equipment across there to clean that swale out and keep it open. You can see here, again, 2 1/4 inches of rain. There's significant freeboard in that swale. There's significant capacity. The pipes are not flooded. They're not overtopped. Everything is flowing full. Well, not flowing full. Everything is flowing. And again, the reason I put this picture on is just to show that during a typical storm, the system works.
Is it possible to pull that culvert out and use a temporary bridge to access the other side with the cradle?
I mean, you're talking something that's going to have to hold a heck of a lot of. I mean, we don't have a temporary bridge in stock. I'm not sure. It's not like we just throw some steel plates out. I mean, if it was asphalt on both sides, but I mean, you're talking, that ditch is probably from
Peak to peak.
yeah, from top of bank to top of bank. You're probably talking every bit of 10 foot easy, maybe 12 foot. So to get a grade all and the dump truck that has to hold all the dirt that's taking out of the soil, or all the debris and stuff that's taking out when it cleans these things out. No, I don't think so.
I think there was some talk about the property owner maybe allowing access, from the.
From what I understand, the pipe was first put in, and again, we're talking about the pipe on the Pratt Road side, because when the equipment was coming in from Pemberton, we've got the grade all, we're scooping the dirt out, we're loading it up in the truck. We get to the very end, we can't get the equipment across the ditch, so we had to do a U-turn. And this equipment does not have a small turning radius. We're going through the middle of this guy's yard, and it's tearing up the dirt, and the property owner was not happy with the conditions, so we put the pipe in so that we could just do a straight through drive, So that was my understanding. So this is going to start trying to address your concern. remember when I showed you that this pipe event in the storm drain system eventually goes through Nistdale off Royal Mall and finds its way out to the river? Downstream of Pratt Road is Royal Mile, where this storm drain system goes behind several people's houses. The amount of water going through this system eroded a 6-foot deep channel behind these people's houses. Okay, I mean, this is right on the back of where their kids are playing, where they've got playground equipment. I could stand in this ditch and the top of my head would barely come up to the surface. There was significant erosion, significant downstream property damage due to the amount of rain. Where we have the discussion from Pratt Road, make the pipes bigger, make the pipes bigger. Downstream, they're saying, make the pipes smaller, keep the water up. Why do we have to have any water from anywhere upstream of us? Why can't we just hold our water and just treat ours? And it's like, well, this is the natural channel, the natural path of the water. So this right here is summing up the balancing act that we're trying to do. Yes, we can go throw in larger pipes. We can tear the pipes out of Pemberton, put in 60-inch pipes everywhere. But again, the water's got to go somewhere downstream, and that's causing more damage further and further downstream. Is it possible to sit there and excavate and create large channels with stabilized entrances? Sure. But we're going to be spending tens of millions of dollars to put in systems like this, and that touches back on our design storms, which is we generally size our storm, or what's called for the 2 and the 10-year storm. Now, that does not mean that this storm only happens once every 2 years. It's a probability. It's a misnomer that's really does us all a disservice. The 2-year storm, you put that number 1 over top of it, has a 50% chance of occurring. The 10-year storm has a 10% chance of occurring. So when you hear that we've had the 100-year storm 4 or 5 times in a year or over the course of 3 years, that just means that storm has a 1% chance of occurring in a year. It's a probability, it's not a frequency. Okay?
Let me interrupt you very quickly.
Yeah, sorry.
They have to change the recording in the back, so we have to stop you. We have to
That's fine.
recess. It shouldn't
I
take
can take
more
a breath now.
Yeah, it wouldn't take more than a couple of minutes.
Just a couple minutes.
Process.
Okay, so where we left off, you were expressing the fact that whatever relief we try to give Pratt Road could create a negative impact on the Nistdale area downstream.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what I'm just trying to highlight is whatever changes we make, it's got to be a systemic approach. And generally, we need to start downstream and work our way up so that we're not just suddenly flushing significantly more water to downstream property owners that aren't able to handle it.
Is this going to change our way of thinking with future developments?
It's a discussion that we can have. Again, it goes back to what storm do we want to make developers design to, with the understanding that the larger the storm we make them put in, the larger their pipes are going to be, the larger their ponds are going to be, the less lots they're going to have, the more expensive the subdivisions are going to be. It's not a simple, let's change one number and not have the synergy effect ripple through everything else. And as an engineer, I can tell you, sure, we can do it. The politics of it, from the business side to the residential side, there's something where I'm glad I can just say, yes, I'm an engineer.
But what about,
You sure? You mentioned a while ago about being on somebody's property and tearing their yard up. We've had an issue up on Line Road where the people on the Delaware side won't let the ditch get cleaned out. Now, we're talking about a 2-state issue here that we actually had talked to the governor of Delaware about, and DENREC and all that. Is there a right, I guess is that the word I want to, that we have in situations like this to enter somebody's property when we have a problem like this? I mean, do we have a right, I can't call it a right of way because that's something that's, I guess, deeded or whatever, but do we have the ultimate right to go onto somebody's property when somebody upstream is having a problem to be able to clean out?
So that's actually
In Wicomico County,
Yeah.
I know I was talking about the Maryland Delaware
Right.
issue, so.
So that was actually a discussion. We've had the first of a group meetings to try to come up with some strategies and solutions to these, and that was one of the questions that was raised. And there is tentative maybe answer to it. With that, you know, exactly. You know, if the lack of maintenance is causing flooding on a county-owned road, if it's causing damage,
Well, now, let's not talk
If-
just about a county.
no, I
Let's talk
understand.
about
If there is,
upstream, yeah.
it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, it's an implied use for a swale to convey the stormwater, then there is a possibility, and I will just say that it's something that's,
In the case you gave with the Line Road, you have people unwilling to let them clean that ditch. In a lot of cases, our roads crews will contact that homeowner and say, may we come onto your property, clean out a ditch that's causing multiple issues, and then we try to restore it as best as possible. So if we tear it up, we'll put matting down to stabilize it. We'll plant seed. It's not always perfect, but in a lot of cases, we'll have citizens work with us. It could be a tree blocking a thing. It could just be, buildup of sediment. It could be a beaver has built a
we've had
dam,
those problems,
and we get permission to go in and try to remedy the flooding issue by working with the homeowner. So in that case, we don't need an easement. We don't need that.
Right.
We just talk to them, and that's.
But when you have to do more than just clean out a ditch or kill a beaver or whatever you have to do, I mean, when you have to, say in this situation here where you're gonna be down in Nutters where,
Nisdale.
Nisdale, and you might have to do some major renovations down there if you make changes further upstream.
It's,
Is there an inherent right to go onto these people's property and do that?
I don't.
Isn't there a 10-foot right, don't we have a 10-foot right-of-way on the ditch?
I thought we had some kind of
We
easement.
have a 10-foot right-of-way, don't we?
You have a subdivision plat has
Like,
stormwater easements on it. County can stay in the stormwater easements and do work.
That's if you got a subdivision.
If
plan.
you have a
Right.
subdivision
But you might
plan.
not have that. You might have your farmer or the situation in Delaware, of course, that really complicates things when it crosses the state line, but
Yeah.
I guess that's my question. Do you have an inherent right to enter those people's property when it's causing problems upstream?
That's a tough one,
Okay.
because there's not code
Okay.
on that in this county, okay?
But there is code in other counties? Maybe if you could review that for us and let us know what we can do
Sure.
to give us that authority.
Sure.
Because it sounds like we might need it.
Yeah, it's an issue being discussed certainly right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there are
That's good
some
to know.
other options that further in the presentation we can, hopefully will help address this. We have some ideas on how to get access.
Going back to the Pratt Road real quick before you go to Kaywood.
Yes.
It appeared to me from being there that some of the areas, and especially the ditches between the picture you showed of the flooding, going west toward North Upper Ferry, that there were ditches that actually stopped. And the water, I mean, if it were ever to even try to, find any relief, there were no ditches.
Yeah.
100 yards west of these properties.
Yes.
That's the high point of the
Yeah,
road.
exactly. A lot of discussion has been about, well, can we throw another pipe in underneath that driveway?
It's not even a driveway, the entire yard, there's no ditch in front of it.
Yeah, again, it's because it's at the high point, the water's shedding down, so that you don't need to put a 6-foot deep ditch or a 4-foot or 3-foot deep ditch when that's the very tip of the peak. It can be significantly shallower, and generally for the first 150 feet or so, water, when it hits the ground, it's doing what we call sheet flow. You've got to get beyond that where it starts channelizing and start forming naturally. And even again, on the sides of the road, with the grading that we do with our road construction, there's enough room to handle small amounts. It's when it gets further on and the water starts collecting in from a larger drainage area that we start seeing the constructed swales. So you're right, there's not, and it's because it's at the very tip of those high points. Now, we can certainly go in and construct them. We can throw in these pipes. But what I can tell you is from some of the shots we've taken, the water, in order to go back the other direction and start heading towards Upper Ferry, would have to rise higher than it was in this case. Now, that's not to say that we can't go in and do those improvements anyway. And again, we're gonna be taking survey shots of the entire length of Pratt Road to see if it's something that we can do, what elevation do we put it at? Which one's gonna make the most sense? So we're not saying no, we're just saying understand that if we put a pipe in there, you're probably not gonna see water picking up and going the other direction unless you get more flooding than what we already had.
Maybe if you're thinking from the perspective of the 2.5-inch standard rainfall, but you have to anticipate for the 8-inch.
No, even with that 8-inch, there was water at that high point that wasn't, they didn't have any water in their, they had a little bit of ponding in their front yard, but, further on towards, we weren't seeing it. We drove the whole length. I mean, there were sections that were dry, that were up higher.
Are you saying that, sorry. I'll be quick. Are you saying no matter what we would do here, if we had the same scenario happen again, that we would probably have the same problems?
If we got 8 inches of rain on that area and
And
that,
8 inches of rain on top of a 3-inch rain, 5 days, 3 days later.
it would flood again, yes.
No, but even if you made more improvements,
If we put the pipe in underneath the gentleman's driveway with the current conditions the way they are, yeah, it's not going to change it. Because again, what this boils down to is that system got more rain than it could handle.
but what I'm asking you, are you gonna be able to change the system by putting the pipes?
That's what the survey shots are hoping to show, but even at a 48-inch pipe, you can have a rainfall that exceeds that, and you can go 60-inch pipe, and you can have a rainfall that exceeds that. Again, I always go back to Dallas mentioned we had 14 roads damaged. The bypass was shut down. If people recall, this was the rainfall that shut the bypass down. Those roads, the state bypass roads, like an interstate, are built to higher standards, and we had a major washout there. So it wasn't just Pratt Road. It wasn't just Nistdale.
we know that.
We got calls all along Pemberton. We had, significant roads wash out due to the amount of rain we had.
I guess
This has been repetitive here, though. This has been repetitive.
Especially over this last year and a half.
Right.
Been repetitive, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just the one big rain, which we can all agree is maybe a fluke, but that it keeps happening and that they're afraid it's going to keep, what's the point of even living there if this is going to keep happening and, the drainage can't be the system, like Joe said, can't be fixed. I mean,
Well, and again, the answer is yes, it can be fixed. That's the easy answer. The question is, how much do you want to spend?
Okay.
That's the
And
hard
Nistdale
question.
would be affected, and you're limited by the pipe size because you also have groundwater to contend with.
That's true also.
And if you go too deep with the pipe, you're gonna have water sitting in that pipe 24/7. That's capacity you've already lost, so you could do 15 pipes next to each other. I'm just trying to say, if we were trying to fully prepare for another 8-inch rain after a, 5-inch rain on Monday, but then the right-of-way needs are absurd, and the effects of the road driving over that, it's
It's a multi-layered issue. It's not, let's just throw in a larger pipe.
well,
I
and
think we know that, too.
Well, and I guess that's the question is that, so, and we've probably prevented you from actually getting to this point, but so there's going to be kind of an assessment on this to give us, like you said, kind of get, so here's what we can do, here's how much it's gonna cost. It's up to you guys to figure out if you wanna do that. Is that jumping forward to the end of your presentation?
In a sense, yes. That goes towards one of the bullet points.
Right, yeah, because I think that would be because, these folks want to know, all right, what's going to be the answer from the county? And then you guys provide us the answer, and then they get to pressure us as whether or not we, as like you said, the political people, decide whether we're going to do that. I mean, I think that's the point we want to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these studies take time to get the survey work, to look at them right, to do calculations, unlike American Legion Drive, to actually calculate, what based on a certain rainfall, what are these pipes? And it's not as simple as, well, remove that pipe that we think shouldn't be there, or add a pipe over this way. It's looking at, all right, to make water go uphill and head towards Upper Ferry, how deep is that pipe gonna be? How much right-of-way do we need? How many trees do we have to cut down to put that ditch in? removing a pipe that then limits our ability to maintain the ditch. Well, then the ditch grows up and then it loses capacity because we can't get a grade all in there. So it's, we don't want to make any hasty decisions is ultimately the message we want to convey.
When we lost Barron Creek Road with that storm, I mean, I remember specifically at this table, that one discussion we had was, well, the only good thing about this is that we can now develop a plan as to how to address stormwater across Wicomico County. That was over a year ago.
Yes.
So I think the urgency here is much more extreme. You know, we have to anticipate another storm maybe coming in 2 months, because we have no idea. But I'd hate to have to visit these homes again and see, you know, 6 feet of water or 3 feet of water in their yards.
Well, with these back-to-back hurricanes, I guess we've been pretty lucky
Yes.
this month. But I guess the big question that people want to hear is, do you have a plan?
Yes. And
We're not letting you get there.
I did not say,
I didn't want to take your bullets from you.
Dallas, what's on the next slide?
I'm glad you asked. So.
Well,
so,
I read those bullets, and there's a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, so South Kaywood, again, the red line here on this aerial is what this one is showing is there is a swale behind the houses on South Kaywood. What's unique about South Kaywood is underneath that swale is also a storm drain. The system was designed relatively kind of a unique situation in that you have a above ground swale that carries the water to several inlet points that then drops that water into a storm drain that's further below the swale and then takes it eventually, like we talked about, to Parker Pond.
And these are the ones that are right directly behind their houses in their yards.
Exactly. So, this is South Kaywood Drive. Now, this area got about 6 inches of rain. I think we've seen some of the videos of these areas.
Yeah, I was there.
You know, water flooded up, very similar to what happened on Pratt Road. Again, just for comparison, almost the same exact shots, and the house on the right in the white is the Walls residence. You can see what these areas look like in about 2 1/4 inches of rain. Some of the comments we were hearing early on was, well, the road floods in a 1/2 inch of rain. And we just want to show during what I think we all used to consider a typical storm, the system is functioning properly.
Right. It was about a year ago, September, that you all went out there and cleaned out their ditches, the walls, and some of the ditches in that neighborhood there. The county
ditch-
went out there.
That was before Dallas.
well,
Yes, you
okay.
are correct. The September rainfall was the one that took out Snow Hill Road
Yes.
as well. So that was another big rain.
So, what I just want to show here is these are some of the pictures of that swale behind these houses. You can see on the far right, there's been driveways built over top of this swale. Folks have thrown in little 6-inch pipes that are kind of impeding the flow. You can see in the middle where the water is eventually trying to get to. Now, what you can't really see in this second picture is that there is a pipe at the very end of this culvert or end of that swale that's bringing the water into this inlet, okay? What's happening is on the third slide is the water is traveling down this swale, going underneath this rear driveway pipe, and eventually coming into a point right here. Now that's about 3 foot beyond the edge of this back driveway, and at that point leaves pine shats, sediment has all built up and is impeding the flow through that area, which is why you tend to see water backing up on those properties back there, okay?
So are you saying then putting these small pipes there is what's causing their
Well,
problems?
the small pipes are not helping. I've met with Miss Walls on site multiple times, and she's told me they've experienced backups, they've experienced some clogs. When I was there, you know, the simple test, it took a leaf off, dropped it in the water. Was the water going through that pipe? Yeah. But was it hindering the water? Yeah. It was going through, but it would pass through faster. Now, we went out there, this is we've cleaned out part of this swale so that it will reach from the point where you're not seeing any water in here, it now will reach into this inlet, okay? So are you saying then putting these small pipes there is what's causing their problems?
Right.
Well, the small pipes are not helping. Miss, I've met with Miss Walls on site multiple times, and she's told me they've experienced backups, they've experienced some clogs. When I was there, you know, the simple test, it took a leaf off, dropped it in the water. Was the water going through that pipe? Yeah. It was going through, but it would pass through faster. Now, we went out there, this is you know, into that pipe. So that blockage has been taken out.
What defines, Dallas, what defines whether it's the county's responsibility to maintain those swales or the homeowner?
It's what's on the plat. When these things are recorded, whether or not they gave us the easement or whether or not the easement went to the homeowners association. And then a lot of times, these homeowners associations, especially in these older communities, have gone defunct or people just aren't paying into them.
In this case of Kaywood, is it consistent that it's the county's responsibility from this area all the way to Parker Pond?
No. What's consistent is that what's in the road is our responsibility, and these swales behind the locations are not in our easements. They're not in our right-of-way. It just so happens in this case, there was a large clear area that we could get our small grade all in the interest of trying to help people out. I said, go out there and clear that little section.
Well, most ditches are typically in the front of the house, and these are
Yeah,
behind the house.
well,
Well, this falls back
you know,
to,
it depends. There are some other locations that I can show you in this.
I've never seen it.
this kind of falls back to Joe's question when he was talking about Delaware. You have a neighbor who has a problem because they're, the house two houses down isn't cleaning out their ditch or the swale. Is there some type of ordinance needed in the county to enforce that?
Yeah, that's
It's part of the
looking at.
presentation.
Yeah, that, I think some of the enforcement mechanisms, similar to codes compliance, could be helpful in terms of people who kill all the grass on their ditch. They'll just, instead of cutting it because it's too steep, they'll kill all the grass. Well, with no grass there, it's no longer stabilized. You have a heavy rain, it then cuts in, you have dirt washed down, cause a blockage. You have people who actually dump leaves.
You've seen my
And-
next slide,
No,
haven't you?
probably, maybe.
So,
They do
common
burn leaves
common
in
causes,
ditches.
okay? These are some examples throughout the area. See, these are some of the, some of them are worst case, some of them are actually kind of typical. Here behind Wainwright, folks have filled in their swale, and you can't even really tell that there's a swale there anymore, with trash, debris, yard clippings. Someone built a fence over the swale.
Where's this at?
Wainwright.
Avenue?
Yeah. Along Morris Street, someone has gone in and sprayed, or Morris Road, rather, has sprayed weed killer. And by killing that vegetation, there's nothing holding the dirt in place. So when the water goes by, it erodes the swale, and it clogs it in, and we see washouts. On places like out here at Cardinal and Meadowlark Drive in the Hollywood subdivision, they have swales that run between, drainage swales that run between the properties. We reached in there with our grade all as far as we can, but there's about 2.5 to 3 foot of sediment built up into that swale that their neighbors will tell you has never been cleaned out in the 27 years they've been living there. And again, in the case of, all of these, we've got to get our equipment's a grade all. It's 15 foot wide, and we've got a little bit of a clear area on this side, but on the other side, what's typical of the swale through most of that subdivision is it's built up with fences, with sheds, which is why now when these subdivisions get approved and we have a swale, we get them to give us a 15-foot easement, not centered on the swale, but off the top of the bank so we can get our equipment in. One of the things I'm going to propose coming up in future budgets is to get a mini excavator for roads, because we simply can't fit our even the small grade alls into these areas to get them cleaned out. And on top of that, there's also the issue of simply getting a truck in to clean it, to take the dirt out once we've scooped it
Where
out.
does the excavator dump the
Dump it. We
soil?
can't just dump it right back on the side, because that's not allowed by sediment erosion control.
In your process of looking at law, I think you need to be kind of cautious. I can understand giving the county the right to go in and do it, but to make the people financially responsible for cleaning some of this stuff out, because what you're gonna run into is a property owner here and a property owner here, with a swale in the middle, there's gonna be a big argument about who should pay for it. So what are you looking at
Yeah, and-
for that?
That's,
And think about farm fields where
Right.
you have long
Right.
ditches and it's expensive.
Right, and big wooded lots, wooded, so what are you looking at? Are you trying to make the property owners financially responsible for that, or just trying to get the right to do it?
Both.
Yeah, let me, now, you've seen my end slide.
So how did tax ditches fall into this?
Could I add one thing? I'll ask Paul, too. I think in the last 20 or 25 years, most of the subdivisions have been subject to stormwater management agreements
Yeah.
that are recorded, and I believe under those, the initial responsibility is on the homeowners group.
Right.
The county can come in and maintain it, and then I think charge.
But you got farmers out there with.
Well, I'm not thinking of the farm situation, I'm thinking of, the what, the subdivision
You have two things.
situations.
You have the subdivisions, like Larry just said, and then you have the tax ditch association.
Tax ditches is
Yeah.
completely
And,
different.
you know, that's a whole nother
But not all
state of
farmers,
being.
not all farmers are in tax ditch, areas either.
I think it would be safe to say that there's probably a greater need for tax ditches because of these storms we're seeing and what road washouts, but you know, establishing a tax ditch association is quite an undertaking. Can be done, but it's quite an undertaking.
It's already been done.
Well, we've got them,
I'm
yes.
talking about more of them.
More,
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, and those are oversaw by the Maryland Department of Agriculture. We've got, you know, I've got a list of what ditches we've got, who the contacts are. You know, got a good contact over at Department of Agriculture, so, you know, and I've even tapped them to say, hey, look, you know, are there funds available and things like that. But we're getting a little bit
Aren't
ahead.
those reps appointed by the county, though?
The viewers, they call them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole process to establish it, and then there's the operational part that goes on into the future.
Another common concern is that houses are being built in low elevations. We've seen this a lot. People build, oh, look, there's a creek running in my backyard. How nice, how pretty. This is gonna be a great house. Then it rains, and they find out they just built their house in a floodplain. Or the houses are being built in low-lying areas. What I can tell you is the majority, and I'll tell you about 90% of the calls that we received, and I just want to show you this real fast. This is a stack, every sheet of paper in here is a phone call or email that we received over the course of this August storm. Over 300
Right.
of what we've received at roads to try to adapt. And what I can tell you is 90% of these are related to either clogged ditches, swales not being maintained that were private, or someone built their house in a low area. And it's,
Well,
And
that's,
it's not always someone, a builder does and sells it to someone. We had that issue out. on
I
Forest Road.
don't
So,
disagree with that statement.
You know,
Well-
so, I mean, it's not just, you know.
Well, and, I mean, these aren't necessarily, you're saying a flood zone, but, like Pratt Road isn't a flood zone, but it flooded. I mean, and I know one family had flood insurance, the next door neighbor didn't, so this is,
No, you're right. And again, like I said, that's, that generalization of clogged swale or you built in a flood zone, flooding area, low spot, you're right. I mean, there are certain areas where it doesn't apply. I'm just saying that, of these two hot spots don't fall into that category of you built in a floodplain.
Planning and zoning doesn't restrict that when they issue a building permit?
Some of these, again, it's these older homes. I'm not sure what the regs were back when they were built in these older subdivisions.
We had a fellow in planning and zoning that was in charge of the water runoff buildings, when people built buildings. Herman and he retired. Did he get replaced?
Herman's been gone for a
Yeah, no,
while.
but did he get replaced? Is there somebody do we have somebody in that capacity that looks at
Brandon?
this?
Yes. Yeah, we have a stormwater inspector that, he makes sure that subdivision ponds are being maintained.
Okay.
I think it's on a 3-year basis, but,
And two, when we see a subdivision plan, we're not seeing individual lot grading plans. We're not seeing how each home builder is going to build their lot and how that's going to drain. When we get these, random one-offs, we can take a look at that, but in a larger subdivision, we're not seeing individual lot grading plans, and it's something that we're discussing. Is it something we need to start looking at to see individual lots? But again, then you're talking about putting a cost onto the developer to develop his grading plans for these lots to then to submit to the county, which goes, there's more cost, there's more bureaucracy. But again, I think in this case, it would certainly be worthwhile to help protect these folks from the flooding.
Can we use something that you have, you've taken pictures, you've got the rainfall amounts for the county. Do you have some area of the whole county that had issues with these floods this time? And make sure that planning and zoning knows those, or health department knows those, so knows about this, so when somebody comes in the future to build, that they can be identified as this was a problem area, so we don't, so nobody builds a house, you know.
But we would be basing that just because they happen to have the 8 inches of rain compared to up in San Domingo had a quarter inch of rain.
Well, that's what I mean, that's what
But
I'm
they're
saying,
not always
so
gonna get the 8 inches of rain.
what do we do about, say this area here, say his neighbor wants to build a house there, so he's got a perk, or the person that owns it's got a perk, but yet with this situation here, the field's flooded. You're gonna say it's still okay to build a house there?
We've been in conversations with Jack and planning and zoning about how's the best way of doing this. I think currently subdivisions do not require individual lot grading plans. That is an additional expense for a developer that then gets put onto the homeowner, and traditionally we've not been asking it. We look at the overall subdivision drainage, and I can tell you the roads were draining fine in this case it's phase 4 of West Nisdale. The lots, however, were built lower than the road.
And somebody's a foot
So
lower.
that water in front of that house there is not getting to the road at all.
Yeah, in fact, the neighbor on this lower picture, you can see the top tip of the house behind these trees. His backyard was flooded. He had 2 pumps running. We met with him. He had 2 pumps running, pumping the water from his backyard into the road, and that storm drain was taking that water every bit as it could. And this is all eventually leading through this. Well, actually, no, this one led to a different pond. I was gonna say it leads to the same one that we saw before, but it doesn't. But yeah, I mean, the road and the drain we're taking every bit of water that his pump could put out. It's just that the swale, those lots were a foot lower than the road.
I thought there was a time that the state or the county would not approve a house being built on a lot that held water like that.
Well, this was after 8 inches of rain, so in most cases it's been high and dry. Every time we've been out there, it's been high and
I
dry.
understand it's unusual.
But it goes back to a significant amount of rain.
Yeah. So, what I want to talk about is our fixes. There's a strategy called the 3 E's: education, engineering, and enforcement. And the first part is educating the public about, look, don't fill in your swale with trash and yard waste. Take it to the landfill. Keep these areas clear. Don't build up your fences and your sheds over top of these things and clog them up. They serve a purpose. That there's some public outreach that can be going on. We can also talk about the HOA's responsibility. I can tell you out there till Kilburn, I was talking to one of the people on the HOA. I said, we charge $40 a year, and I'm lucky if I get a third of my community put in that $40 to try to clear this out. And people need to understand, look, sometimes it's not just about telling people what color of shingle they can put on their road or on their house, and that's why they're not going to fund it because they want it to go away. Well, you need the money to maintain your drainage. Also looking at lot selection and making folks aware, hey, look, realistically, if you're coming to the shore, don't buy a property until you've seen what it looks like in a rainstorm. I mean, it's that, yeah, it's yeah. Also for how to spot a clogged pipe, and I'm gonna, there's locations where if you see water on one side of your pipe and you don't see any water on the other, that's how you spot a clogged pipe. But if you've got a full ditch running through with water, that's not a clogged pipe. It's the water's going through it. So again, and also talking to people about what this 2, 10, 100-year storm, what these definitions are, so that I was watching a thing on 60 Minutes about the flooding that they have in Houston, and the lady was discussing how they got these 500-year storms, and they've happened twice in You know, it's a statistical thing.
Right.
On the engineering side.
Question, go back to the education. How do you plan on educating the public?
Well, you know, I will tell you, it's a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. We had a lot of experience with this over at State Highway when we were trying to educate the Ocean City folks to use crosswalks. There was an entire public outreach campaign.
So now they're going to build a fence.
Now they're going to partially build a fence, yes. And the same way we've built it, they're building a fence, I almost put it on the wrong
Route
hat
50.
there, along 50. Yes, because they work. But it was the end goal. What they did first was the low-cost things of trying to educate the public, and they saw deaths go down. And I think the same thing can happen here if we try to educate the public. It's about more than just taking and putting a static message on a site and saying, hey, well, we put our little blurb on our county website, and that's what we did to educate the public. No, you've got to get out there to events like the Beer Festival, like Seagull Century, like any of the other festivals we have in the county. Put a little booth up and have folks out there hand out some little tchotchke to get people to come over and talk to them, handing them a brochure, putting out little videos to show what things are out there. Public outreach campaigns through things like Facebook and Instagram and getting the word out. Social media is a very powerful tool. There's an entire process that was followed very effectively over at State Highway, and I think we can take that same approach from what was used for traffic fatalities and apply that same tool here for public education, okay? And hopefully that'll help provide better support for the political movement of when we get down to that 30. But when we approach the second E for engineering, yeah, we can make these swales bigger, but it's gonna require money, and yeah, we're gonna have to get you guys some cost estimates and tell you what these studies are gonna cost and how much these things are gonna run. You know, so it is entirely possible to go in here. We can sit there and require, you know, wider areas. We can look for, you know, one of the possibilities that was being discussed that kind of blends the engineering enforcement is, do we do an urban service district for some of these communities that don't have their HOAs doing cleaning out their ditches anymore? Is there enough people in this community that they're willing to stand up and say, yeah, county, we want you to come in and do this, and we're all willing to pay a little bit each year? Again, not looking for the full HOA, but just to go in. Is it, you know, is that a possibility? Yeah, exactly.
Just like lights.
Exactly, just like lights, but providing it for drainage.
Does state law allow urban service to be defined as a public drainage?
In county code, when you look at urban service districts and what they can include, it includes public drainage, or in the case, private drainage. So in an older subdivision who's let their ditches fill up with now old growth trees, we could go in and reestablish those ditches. It's gonna cost money to cut trees and delicately get in there. And then we can,
mature trees, not old growth
yeah,
trees.
there you go.
Experienced trees.
Yeah.
I think also it might be able to do a special tax district. Might be easier than doing an urban service district.
Yeah, because sometimes you'll have two houses are flooded in a subdivision, and if you're on the high end, you don't care,
Right.
and you're not willing to pay, and you're not gonna sign the petition to get things started, so it's possible.
Yeah, and that leads into the last part, which is the enforcement side, which is when we're finding these swales filled in, giving folks notes, having code enforcement go out, hey, look, clean your swale out, or you're gonna get fined. And I mean, that's the unpleasant part of it. Or if these communities aren't willing to enter into an urban service district, but their lack of maintenance on their private swale is now flooding and damaging county roads, do we go in and say, look, all right, we're gonna clean it out, and we're gonna have to put the cost to this community or to these homeowners? And again, this is not, you know, I don't have all the answers to every question you're gonna have probably about this process, but these are the ideas that we're thinking about, and what you're gonna see coming forward over the coming 6 months, year, 2 years, are the fruits of this as we try to move forward and address flooding in the county. Because, you know, we started the discussion with the water and sewer, but I can tell you, no one's called me up asking about water and sewer issues. I've had almost a month and a half calls of flooding and drainage issues. And that's been the focus. That's been what folks are concerned about. And we certainly can address them. It's just, this is our plan, and we'll propose something. If you're not happy, we'll tweak it and figure out how to make it work.
I would think that we would certainly make some plans so that we're prepared to suggest what type of funding is going to be necessary before we get in the next budget cycle.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's still too far down the road. I think it needs to be quicker than that. But that certainly should be the ultimate deadline.
Well, I mean, there's Johnny, I don't know if you saw the email from Johnny Mounts. He'd asked the state, he got some state resources that would be possible for some help with some stuff like this. And maybe I can forward that to you, but, I mean, there could, be state money, things like that to help with some of these sort of things.
I saw his request looking for potential funds, and there was some interaction with emergency management reached out to me about it,
Okay.
but I've not seen any results that,
Okay.
if anything's come out of that yet.
I think Tracy Gordy gave some recommendations. DNR or MEMA could have, could probably help with assistance.
So it sounds like we're gonna have to create legislation.
I think so.
So, are you guys gonna evaluate the whole county as far as the plans and then, because like on the west side, I mean, it flooded up Jersey, Morris, Lake Street, I mean, it was impassable. And it flooded it out, and Patrick Avenue, and it comes from the Cody Cox Creek not being cleaned out. So that's gonna be
And what's complicated about that is that's not just county and private,
City.
that's county, city, private.
Well, I think
And-
the city's done their part, but I think their major part was the West Road, the West Road by Kalamazoo, and they reconstructed it, redone all theirs, all the way up through down through the river, Isabella. They pretty much done most of their work.
Yeah, and like we talked about, Lee Alton's been out there. He's been looking through the ditches, and he's found a couple places where it's left us scratching our head because it looks like there's like little check dams built up with some pipes going through, and we're not entirely sure if that was done as part of someone else's stormwater project. So, in particular with Cody Cox, it's something we are looking at. That there are.
You got MDE too.
Yeah, you've got MDE. So what we're doing, the approach moving forward for specifically things like Pratt Road, as we're going out and we're doing this, we're going to collect the survey to see what other things that we can do into that area. It's not going to just be ripping out everyone's pipe and putting in larger ones. That requires the engineering study. So you're going to have spot improvements in those locations after we go through and actually do a study and improve larger drainage sheds. But we're also going to be looking at, these other two E's, the education and the enforcement, and moving forward with those.
Any further questions from anybody?
So,
got it, go ahead.
when will the surveying start?
We're expecting it to start in October. There's actually, there's a large number of places that we wanted to survey, and we're sending it out to one of our consultant surveyors simply because the in-house staff, the folks that just shot that ditch between Pratt and Pemberton, we're overwhelmed with stuff. So I have to pull guys off of the ditching crews to do that kind of thing. So we have about 6 locations throughout the county that we want to get the full surveys on, and Pratt Road is the #1 priority. We're asking them all for prices. We have 3 consultants. We're going to ask each one of them for prices at the different locations, and then cherry pick out who's got the best prices for the different ones.
You're talking about education and all that. Bless you. Does the county also need education as far as maybe having some type of town hall in the different sectors of the county to just make sure we're covering all the problems? Or do you think your stack of 3 inches of emails
It's like it's been done.
is sufficient for what you know is
I think there's definite value in having drainage town hall meetings in whether it's the various quadrants or just a big one at the Civic Center. I think there's value in that. I think there's value in recording some of this and then putting that up on as a video so folks that can't attend the meetings can click on it and see what's been said. It's the start of the outreach, explaining some of these issues. I do feel that there's value in that.
I would think meeting with specific HOAs that exist and are not defunct, but at least go through and say, these are our ditches, these are your ditches to maintain. And then,
Right.
are you capable of doing that?
That
And
seems to
then
be-
that's the conversation starter, in terms of, all right, do they have ditches that are theirs that they're unable to maintain? And then how do we work with them in some format to clean those out?
We've got some developments, or one development rather, where there's, the lady is willing to, excuse me, she's willing to go out and get prices on her own to find out how much it would cost to get her ditches cleaned out, and then send a letter to her homeowners and say, hey, look, it's gonna cost X. If we divide it by all of the houses in here, we each pay Y, and we can get our ditches cleared out and the road will stop flooding. And she's not talking about restarting the HOA and somebody pitching in something every year. It's more of a one-time thing, but that type of community grassroots activism is, puts her in her project at the top 99 percentile of what some of these communities are willing to do. And I think that's a good example to highlight of things that can be done, that if people don't want the government poking around in their stuff, that there are other opportunities and avenues. And we're working with them. She needs some shots to know, elevation shots, of what elevation these pipes are, so that she can tell these contractors how big to deep the ditch. So we'll get her those shots, and she needs some help about knowing, well, where is this thing supposed to drain? So we're helping her with that.
Well, the homeowners association, from my understanding, Mr. Wilbur, that's not a voluntary process. If the homeowners association doesn't address it, the city has the authority to fine them.
That is absolutely right. And then it becomes part of the tax bill.
Well, there's your homeowner solution.
And if they're,
The county does it, and then it's prorated out to the whole subdivision on the
Right,
tax bill.
which is, yes. So, I mean, the homeowners is the easy fix.
That's your stormwater.
Just for the
easement.
association.
Right.
When we're talking, you said fines and liens for unmaintained swales that flood county roads. Are you just talking about swales, or are you talking about ditches?
swales, ditches, tiles,
Okay,
culverts, whatever we want to.
Well, I'm gonna use my neighborhood for an example. The road at the front of my house gets flooded often, we just put up with it, stay home if we have to. But it drains to a large watershed from Shavox Road through the woods, all the way down Forest Grove Road. Then it goes into the swamp that crosses Mount Herman Road where the three bridges are, east of Forest Grove Road. So you're talking about numerous property owners between where I live and between where Forest Grove is. And then when you get across Forest Grove, you start talking about different property owners. Then you start talking about the Nature Conservatory. So there's two roads that get flooded there. So who do you
It's-
find?
So
Well,
where,
that's-
and where
that's
do
a
you,
tax
where do you draw
ditch.
the, where do you
So
draw
who
the
do you
line?
find?
And let's say we go in there and your road's flooding and we go through and we find, well, it's a beaver. We're not, at that point, off the top of my head, thing is, well, we're not finding anybody. We're going out and trapping the beaver and get it cleaned out.
There was a beaver problem there. but
Right, no,
apparently it's
but
gone now.
that's the thing. What I can tell you is, I cannot give you a cookie cutter solution to every problem. The old saying is, the answer to every engineering question is, it depends. And you can give me lots of, no, realistically, you can give me lots of, well, what about this and what about that? What I can tell you is, the best solution is that we're gonna tailor fit these as best we can. What we need is some tools in our toolbox, and some of these tools will work in certain situations and some won't, and it'll be an iterative process. But it's something that, so in that case, if you tell me, well, we've got this long stretch, and who's gonna be fine? Well, the first question is, what's causing the drainage problem? Is it that there's trash in your ditch, or is it that you're draining to a body of water that has a lot of water built up in it already, and the entire area is just very shallow?
Okay. So
you know-
who do you find?
What's that?
Who do you find in that case?
Maybe we don't find anybody.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I
maybe
would
we
think
see what I'm
the
saying. You know,
fine, the enforcement is the last opportunity. I think if we can do
That's what I'm getting
something,
at.
if we
I
can
just think it's
educate
gonna be
people, that's the
so-
way to go.
When you start talking about fines and liens for unmaintained swales, now I can see if somebody puts a, dumpster wheelbarrow full of leaves in a swale, or I can see if, somebody builds a shed across
Yeah.
their swale, you got those, but natural causes of leaves falling in ditches or trees falling down through a piece of property, and believe it, downstream from where we're at, that happens a lot,
So,
to have a property owner go in and have to start removing trees in a swamp, is gonna be, anyway, when you draw this up, you'll have to, you'll know that you need to address all that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
I mean, these situations over here to the left are where we're talking about, that if somebody said, we go in and number one, we've got the right to ask them to clean this out. And then they say, no. Or we ask them to move their fence back. The cleaning out's the easy part. The harder part is when people put fences and driveways and sheds over top of them, and they run a footer through a post for their shed, and that post pierces one of our pipes
Yeah.
and causes a sinkhole, and this is a completely current situation.
Centennial Village.
Well, we think that, but anyways, the point is, it's really, it's not a one size fit all. So there are cases where, and some people have been like, oh yeah, I'll go in there and clean that out. And folks are willing to try to have community clean out ditch days and things. So it doesn't always involve having some contractor come in with heavy equipment.
The other thing,
And just the knowledge of, look, when you get done with your leaves and your grass clippings, don't throw them in that swale. Don't dump them in,
Let me ask you this, can we, so we can wrap this up, I guess we could meet back in a month to get an idea of where you are with the education, the engineering, the enforcement?
I would say that if we could do quarterly, we could do, you want a month, okay. I'll see what I can come up with in a month.
I'm not saying you have to have the total fix. I'm just saying in a month, I'd like to know what the progress is, because there's two things here. One's the direct work that needs to be done in the neighborhoods that you know are problem areas. The second one is the big total picture of the county as a whole.
Now, one thing that I do want to point out is that, I got very enthusiastic when I was talking about the educational side and what we did at the state. There was a staff of 4 folks from our Office of Public Relations and Communication that was handling that project. This was not, again, when we're talking about some of these large-scale efforts, there's a lot of staff time involved. So it's, I understand I can see a vision of something like that progressing, and maybe we can partner with some other departments and, with the Department of Agriculture and their tax ditch work. I don't know, I'm just spitballing stuff here, but what I can tell you is, it's as far as seeing progress on the education side, a month from now, I might just have a blurb up on the county webpage.
Well,
Is
the
what we were
reason
just
that's
talking-
important is because if we're gonna hold these, if we decide to hold these public hearings, we're gonna need to educate them at the same time as we're getting information from them. We should be prepared to give them the information that you suggest, that you recommend.
Okay.
another incentive to get them to do it, this could affect their septic systems. With not a proper flow of water.
We've had folks bring up to us, how am I supposed, Miss Walls, how is she supposed to sell her house now when she knows it's flooded twice? It's a disclosure, and that's part of it also. This is, affecting your property values. So it's a very, it's a spiderweb networked issue.
Well, we have a mailing address, they call it the tax bills. So maybe our next tax bill to send out, we could send out a notice, just making people aware, maybe some kind of flyer in it.
Yeah, we've sent some out to one, the lady that was having took it on herself to get the contractors in to get her prices,
Which community was this?
It was Hollywood subdivision, Cardinal and Meadowlark. She asked us to mail out letters ahead of her mailing to let the folks know, hey, look, there's some responsibility here. And she asked us to do that so that when she goes through and puts her flyers in her neighbor's mailbox, they don't think, what's this, why would I do this? You know, it's a little preamble, so yeah, I could see something like that flyer going out into, or on a more general case, into the tax bills. You're right,
That's a good idea.
yeah.
Anything else? Okay, next item on the agenda is Sharptown, correct?
Oh, I forgot I had another one.
Can the public make a comment on one of these items here?
If you make it brief, normally we don't accept that, but if you would make it brief, go to the podium over here, please.
Okay.
You have to go to the mic. Let us know who you are, please.
I'm Clay Butterworth. I live on Pratt Road, 26691 Pratt. I fortunately was a little distance from ground zero on Pratt Road. I was hoping for maybe some more specifics. I know that would be quick, given the fact that this flood was not all that long ago, but specifics about how to address this rather than being a quarter away or a year away. I know as people in the community, homeowners there are lots of ideas about what could really improve the problem, running it in the opposite direction. But I want to go back to that culvert idea, and it was in one of the pictures that had to do with Pratt Road. If we can go back to that one real quick. I appreciate you taking a minute.
Further back?
Keep, no, go forward. One just, this, yeah. I'm gonna walk up to the picture and I'll
Okay,
I'll talk
okay.
as loud as I can here.
Laura, you want to give him your mic?
Sure.
Thanks. The culvert in question is where this ditch meets that ditch, and it's to allow people to get into this man's yard to get to that ditch from that way. And we talked about the different pipes being sized compatibly, but there was, this man's driveway has one of those pipes, but his driveway's underwater. And the road has those pipes, but the road's underwater. But that culvert was high and dry and was not underwater, so I really think, my thought is that that's one of the keys to backing up this water and then having it spread in all the yards like that. And I don't think that's a huge item to address. I was hoping maybe there would have been some information here about, yes, we agree this is the main problem, or no, we see the problem as being over here, or just like I agree with you that I think running the opposite direction and taking it down to Upper Ferry, you're gonna have to go over a big hill and go back down to get rid of that water. But I think on the day that this was all sitting out here and that culvert's right in this corner being high and dry where all the other pipes had the advantage of sending water over the road or over the driveway or over wherever that pipe was, I think that was very telling.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.